My name is Johnny, and I beat the often path by leveraging a lifetime of abuse and illness and hardship to benefit a lot of people that I'll never get to meet through music and speaking and a cool technology startup that I accidentally founded.
Welcome back to the Beat the Often Path podcast. I'm your host, Ross Palmer. On this show, I like to showcase unique individuals who have forged their own path in life to remind you that there are radically different ways of being and earning money in this world, many different ways than we've been taught in school and so on. Johnny Crowder is an enigma wrapped in a mystery wrapped in some tattoos. Well, okay, not that exactly, but he is a perfect example of the kind of story I'm looking for on this podcast. He's a touring death metal singer, a public speaker and TEDx presenter, and the founder of Cope Notes, a tech startup that provides positive psychology text messages every day to people who are struggling with mental health. It's a very cool subscription idea that has gained him a lot of popularity in just a few short years. His business has already helped tens of thousands of people, and he's been featured on CNN, Forbes, and much more. We talk about the problem with labels when it comes to people and how you can find your own unique path in this world, improving your own life and the lives of others in the process. So here's Johnny Crowder, founder of Cope Notes. Well, that's a great and intriguing introduction, and it encapsulates everything that we're talking about here on this show. So you've got multiple facets of your existence, of your life. So can you explain a little bit about how all of these disparate pieces fit together, if you can?
A lot of people think they're really different, that heavy metal is different from speaking, is different from running a tech company. And I guess there's truth to that, but they all have the same mission, which is help people feel better tomorrow than they do today. And that has always made them feel like very similar projects to me. It's just, in my mind, it's different avenues to accomplish the same goal.
I completely agree. And that's something that so few people seem to understand or at least recognize in our society. That's what I've noticed. People see things like music and speaking and companies as totally different in a world where we're told you have to niche down, you have to pick one thing, you have to be one thing, you have to represent one thing. But I've always felt that a lot of things can be multiple sides of the same coin. So I think it's super cool that you feel that way too.
I know I'm a really big car nerd, and I know people who will trade in and out of cars. Every couple of years, they'll trade out of whatever car they have into a new car. And they don't lose their identity with each car. They're just I like driving. I like cars. And the vehicle may change, but my passion for driving is the same. And that's how I feel about anything I do, any creative endeavor is this is just the vehicle that I'm able to experience right now in my long-standing mission that will likely never change.
That's so true. And you're trying to find the vehicle that is right for you, that fits best with your abilities, that fits with your interests, and we're constantly searching for what that vehicle is. So I think it's super cool because I also come from a music background. For most of my life, I wanted to be a DJ, and a lot of people know me from that, and I was big into electronic music for years and years and years. And the only thing I ever wanted to be in my entire life from the time I was 11 years old was a traveling DJ. That's it. I had no other vision for myself. But then life happens, you get a little older, my daughter was born, things change, and suddenly you say, hey, maybe that's not the path for me, maybe that's not the thing I'm supposed to do anymore. Maybe I'll start a podcast, maybe I'll try to inspire people, maybe I'll try to be a speaker myself, maybe I'll try to write more. And I find that for me, all of that makes perfect sense, but for a lot of people in the world, they see those types of things. You get into the new car, to borrow your metaphor, and they say, hey, what happened? I thought you were the blue Mustang guy.
Yeah.
And now you're in a red Lamborghini.
Yeah, the thing is, but you're always Ross. That's the best part. The best part is I think there's this weird idea around if you pick a path in life, that's your path and you stick to it forever. But if you think about, again, to use the car analogy, can you imagine Like, you're 30 years old, you got a blue Mustang. You're 35 years old, you got a red Lamborghini. When you're 75 years old, you want something easy to get into, great visibility, right? Super safe. If you have kids, you want something with back seats and rollover protection, all this stuff. So you can't expect yourself to be like, I mean, I look at the band Korn. It's like one of my favorite bands growing up. That was like some of the only heavy metal on the radio at the time when I was a kid. Those guys are 50 years old and
Right.
they still tour. However, eventually they won't, and they will still be Korn. Like, even if those people leave the band, their legacy lives. And the music that you've made and the people that you've met through DJing, that will never change. You'll always be Ross. You'll always have those experiences. And people conflate starting a new project with losing the old one. That's not true.
I love that. That's such a great thing. Why do you think it is that we have such a hard time with that as a society? Why do we have such a strong desire to put people into a box?
Well, the more categorizable something is, which is totally a word, don't bother looking it up to prove me wrong.
I'm with you all the way. Done.
The easier something is to categorize, the less you have to think about it. So if I get to think about Ross as the blue Mustang guy, at least I don't have to actually meet him and think critically about who he is and what he likes. It's like less of a cognitive load for me. But the thing is, like I just said when we started recording, is like, how the heck do you sum yourself up in a sentence or two? But that's what we want to do to other people, because we're dealing with our own complexities. So we want everybody else to be nice and simple so that we have bandwidth left to figure out what the heck we're going to do.
Man, this is already off to an incredible start. I love that we're going this deep at the beginning. This is fantastic. So to give a little context to all of this, I want to talk about your brilliant idea, which I found, and that's how I discovered you, which is Cope Notes. So can you give a quick summary as to what this platform is and to how you came up with it?
Yeah, the how is, I grew up.
You said accidentally.
Yeah. I grew up with multiple mental illnesses. I was in treatment for a long time. I went to school for psych, and I just didn't like how complicated digital mental health resources were. I didn't like all the questionnaires and the qualifying screeners and the dude. And then you had to be tech savvy, and then you have to download something, remember a password, and then link it to your insurance. I'm like, screw all of this. I want something that is super simple that I don't have to remember to use. So, I totally started a company on accident. I never set out to start a company. Like you said, when you were young, you just want to be a DJ. I want to be a rock star. That's it.
That's it.
I never dreamed of one day I'll run a tech startup. Yeah, right, dude. When you're a kid, you're like, I want to be a rock star. But the way that I wanted to solve this problem of the needless complexity of mental health resources was I wanted to strip away all of the things that didn't actually make a material impact on the end user. And so now what Cope Notes does is it really is this simple. We send one text a day at a random time. And no two people ever get the same text at the same time. So I don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what I'm going to get or when. And the text is short, easy to understand. It'll be a psychology fact or a journaling prompt or an exercise that's written by a peer with lived experience. So in plain English, not all clinical and jargony. Then it's reviewed by mental health professionals to make sure it's legit, then delivered at random times. So you never know when we will text you or what the text will say. And then you can journal back and speak freely. And it's like a guaranteed interruption to a negative thought pattern at least once every 24 hours for the rest of your life. So it is like a brain training, neuroplasticity resource that is supposed to make growing in the right direction mentally as easy as possible. I never make a conscious choice to use Cope Notes. It always reaches out to me. I don't have to set aside time or book appointments or even share my personal info like my name. It just kind of does it for me. All I have to do is read 2 or 3 sentences a day. That's it. The brain does the rest.
Now, Does everybody have the same pool of wisdom, or is somebody's personal story factored into the kind of content they receive?
So interestingly, check this out. How would I learn your personal story? Maybe through a questionnaire. And all
Exactly.
of a sudden we find our way
We're
back to the
back.
original problem.
I don't want to fill out
So
a questionnaire. I don't have time.
yeah. So I was like, how the heck can we make Cope Notes smarter? So what we've been working on is something really, really stellar, in my opinion, which is the more you journal in that thread, when you share, a journaling prompt might come up asking about something that has been getting under your skin this past week. And maybe you share like, oh, my freaking daughter, for whatever reason, will just not eat her dinner. And I'm so stressed out about it. I spend time cooking dinner and then she just won't eat it. And then I think, am I being a bad parent? Am I not cooking right? And it bothers me. And then Cope Notes recognizes in your text thread, okay, family. Seems like a theme is family. Maybe text messages that are related to interpersonal relationships and communication might be helpful and more relevant. So over time, as you're journaling, Cope Notes can get a better understanding of what content would be more relevant for you.
Very cool. I'm assuming it did not start out that way. This complexity is stuff that you're building in as you
No
go.
way, dude.
Because you began in 2018, right?
In 2018. So I started working on the original version of Cope Notes was called Better People, which was in like 2016 or so, maybe. And then that became Not a Therapist in 2017. And then Cope Notes, the actual version that exists today, launched in 2018. And the original version, dude, just the original version of Cope Notes, not to mention the previous iterations under different names. The original version of Cope Notes was, now I went to school for psychology, not technology. So what I did was look for the cheapest SMS marketing tool I could find and then just hack the crap out of it and try to repurpose it for Cope Notes. And it was like Google Sheets and copying and pasting from WordPress forms. And it was littered with human error. Nothing was automated. Everything was manually done. I actually had someone bought, so we do enterprise stuff now and we didn't used to. And someone was reaching out to have it to use Cope Notes for employee wellness. And they said, I'm not going to lie, I used the original version of Cope Notes and it sucked. And I used it more recently. It's so much better that now I want it for my employees. And I was like, honestly, that's so cool to hear, to remind me like just how bad the original version was,
Right. And the first draft of anything is shit. That famous quote. I think it was Hemingway who said that, right?
Yeah. You have to push it. You have to make it live.
Start somewhere. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So you've built this. How did you know that you were onto something? At what point did you feel like people were giving you back feedback that you had a good idea that was worth pursuing?
I mean, I certainly started with like an educated guess because Not a Therapist received, we collected feedback forms all the time. And a lot of people were saying like, oh, I wish it was text only. I wish I didn't have to book appointments. I wish it was anonymous. So they were kind of telling us like what they wanted. But I think it was probably, I remember I took a photo of a whiteboard at my desk at my day job that I had, where I wrote 25 subscribers and put all this little like squiggly marks around it and took a photo to celebrate. Now we have like 22 or 23,000. But at the time, I remember thinking like 25 is a big deal. And in my mind, if 25 people are choosing to pay for something, then you're not onto nothing. Like at least you should like collect information from those people. But I gotta be honest, the whole first year, I was completely unsure that it was a sustainable idea at all. Like I really didn't hit any level of like certainty, like, oh, I'm really onto something in the first year at all, I don't think.
Did you have people paying for the service from day one, or was it free to start?
We had like a 7-day free trial. And then people could sign up. But yeah, we had some people who paid day one. And not all of those people were my friends, which was cool. Like the day that we launched, we just posted about it on social media. And then like some of the people who signed up were like, not my mom. And it's like, well, that's really cool. You know, that,
she
like,
has 7 accounts, but the other ones are somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the first day, maybe we had like, 2 or 3 people sign up or something. It wasn't like a gold rush of all these people coming in, but I mean, and it's super cheap too, right? Like it's like $8, $9, $10 a month or something. So it's not like a gigantic financial commitment these people are making, but it was like them typing in a credit card number on a website. And I was like, oh shoot, now I have to help these people feel better. Like that's what I committed to do,
Well, as Johnny said, he was really excited when the first 25 people signed up for his service, and I will be really excited when the first 25 of you subscribe to my podcast. I'm just kidding, but make sure if you listen to the show that you're following it, that you're subscribed. Have you subscribed on YouTube? Have you followed on social media? Have you subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or your podcast platform of choice? And above all, have you shared this episode or episodes like this with people who need to hear it? Again, I cannot grow this podcast without your help. So anything you can do to help spread the word or to support it, I would be very grateful. As you know, it takes incredible effort to put these stories together, to find these people, to make it all happen, to record it, to edit it. You can see how much work it takes. And if you want to be a part of this, and if you enjoy these kinds of stories, please support it in any way you can. That's all I ask. It doesn't take long. Just 15 seconds to leave a positive review or to subscribe would really make a difference. So thank you. And now back to the show. So let's talk about the actual text messages themselves, the content part of this. Obviously, that's going to be the most difficult part. How did you start going about getting a limitless supply of content? How do you think about it now? Has your thoughts changed? Who's writing these things?
Yeah, all the content is written by peers with lived experience, which is really important to me because my background is peer support. But originally, I actually thought I had to write a new text every single day in perpetuity. And I'm like, that's not sustainable. How the heck would you even possibly do that? Especially as you get, and also before, everyone would get the same text every day at the same time. So it wasn't really this like nuanced, unique experience with Cope Notes. It's just like, blah, that's what you get. Like it or leave it.
Like a tweet, basically, a Twitter account.
Yeah, and like that early version was really, it was like, let's say we write a text message and send it today that would have really helped you, but you sign up tomorrow. You never receive that content. And it's like, what a ridiculous, unsustainable way to build this. So we started thinking less about having a limitless supply of text messages and started thinking more about a way to deliver content to people that would allow the content to grow rather than remain stagnant. So what we have right now, which is kind of melts my brain. We have a living library of text messages, which means that, we don't have infinity text messages. If you stay subscribed to Cope Notes for years and years, you might eventually receive the same text twice, but here's what's cool. You will receive the same text ID, but the words in the text will be different because they've undergone countless revisions based on user feedback and clinical oversight. So even if you did get the same text twice, you wouldn't recognize it because maybe 20, 30 times that text has been edited and revised and rechopped. And it's basically a way to create an infinite content library with finite resources while incorporating the feedback loop of user input. It's like
very cool.
A hack.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to know that like the Cope Notes library is growing and learning from everybody using Cope Notes every day in perpetuity. How cool is that? It's
amazing.
Like a crowdsourced mental health resource.
Amazing. So that ID is going to be incredible 15 years from now. It's good. Who knows what it's going to be about.
I know.
What is it going to be
So
whittled
cool.
down to? But you must have an incredibly robust tagging system for this so that you can sort these things. Somebody has problems with family, their daughter's not eating dinner. You have labeled all of these IDs with a bunch of potential topics.
Yeah, so that was a challenge. We worked with a school, University of South Florida, their research department actually went through and coded every single text message in our library with a team of researchers from the Department of Mental Health Law and Policy. So this was like a huge undertaking to like code every single text based on the psychological principle that it's reinforcing, and then have multiple researchers corroborate and have some of them go head to head, like, this text isn't about communication. Yes, it is. And like having to battle it out. So now we have all those content tags, but for a long time, we were like, how on earth are we going to like keep up with that like triage system of like recognizing what's coming in on the inbound side and then categorizing outbound texts to match the inputs. And it's something that we work on every single day. It's like making that system better and like more importantly, a better listener so that when people do journal, they're actually heard.
That's incredible. And that actually brings up a question that I didn't know that I had, but something I've always personally been interested in. In the desire to be credible, which is obviously a desire that you have, research is an invaluable tool. So how did you get actual researchers to help you? What was the model? Did they do it for free? Do you have to pay for them? How can people enlist things like a university research department to help them make their own product better?
Dude, this is a ton of luck I'm about to drop on you. So I've been volunteering in the mental health space for like a decade. So fortunately, I've met a lot of really talented, intelligent people. I've served on boards with them. I've volunteered at events with them. And some of that volunteer work has led me to give guest lectures at universities to psychology students. And after one of my guest lectures, the professor said, can you stick around and talk for a little bit? You mentioned that you were working on a project. I wanted to hear about it. And I kind of explained it to her. And she was like, do you mind if I get my team to like meet with you and learn more about it? And I was like, okay. I thought I was in trouble, dude. I thought I was like breaking the law.
Watch out.
And then they were like, hey, I don't think you understand what you're working on. Like, this is actually a really big deal. Like, you are kind of onto something here. And I don't think you understand like the psychological ramifications of like, what if you're right? Like, this could be huge. This could be a huge discovery. And I started working with them in late 2018. And a lot of it has just been through that like intrigue on the university's part, and then having students and graduate assistants and professors who are willing to participate and be involved in it. It's just been this like, I think people laugh when they hear me say that I'm lucky that I've been volunteering for 10 years, because they're like, what is lucky about working for free for a decade and not being compensated? Which I understand that perspective, but on the other side of that coin, like, no, I may not have been compensated financially for doing that work, but I've been compensated in like relationships with really smart people who were willing to take a closer look at what we were doing and help guide us and inform us to make sure we were on the right track. And I think without those relationships, I don't know that Cope Notes could exist as it does today.
In terms of the financial aspect, has it changed your life for the better to do this?
Well, it's kind of early to ask me that, because I was telling someone earlier, like, yes, the company is doing well in revenue, but we put that revenue towards hiring people and paying for stuff. So personally, I have not received that financial benefit that I think a lot of founders kind of hope to achieve. But I know that on one hand, I trust that it's coming. And on the other hand, I know that if for some reason I never achieved it, this would still be like the most worthwhile thing to do with my time anyway. So I'm not in the the tech founder bliss where like my toes are in the sand. I'm working from Hawaii and I'm driving my Lamborghini to like a 5-star restaurant, staying at the Ritz-Carlton. I'm like not experiencing any of that. But what I am experiencing is like a deep sense of peace and purpose. And I'm not saying that you can't have both. I'm just telling you that I'm not yet in the, personal financial provision stage. And what sustains me through not being in that position personally is knowing that every single day that I spend working on this is a day well spent.
Yep. And you've impacted literally thousands of people's lives directly, and obviously the people on your team must be so grateful. You've impacted their lives incredibly, I'm sure, by giving them a mission, by paying their salary, and motivating all of those people in your orbit.
I think I just forget that, some people came from more corporate backgrounds where they didn't really have a lot of creative autonomy. They didn't get to like feel the impact of what they were doing. But now, like, imagine, if we're going to hire a salesperson, we say, you're not making cold calls and sending emails and like peddling your wares just to close a commission check. Like, if you make this phone call and this business says, yeah, we want to provide this as a benefit for our employees, and then one of those employees uses Coke Notes and is a mother and winds up being there for her child because she checks into rehab, and then, like, play it out. Like, and then that little girl grows up with a mom, and then that little girl writes a book or whatever, and that impacts tons of people. And it's all because you made a good call. Like, it can't be lost on us. Everybody works on code notes. Like, if you're a developer and you write a line of code, like, that line of code could be the reason why some guy named Dan lives to be 89 years old. Because without that line of code that you wrote, he might have died at 17 or 31 or something. And we don't know. But when we get these testimonials in, we're just like, holy crap, everything we do is touching thousands of lives all over the world. And we're lucky to have that sense of purpose, because not everybody gets to have that in like their workday.
Not at all. So few people do. And that is a devastatingly effective leadership or sales tactic, but employed in the best possible way. Everything you just described is like the most effective sales tactic possible.
Dude, but it gives me goosebumps.
It's true.
To think about.
Yeah,
like,
it's true.
And we hear stories of people saying, like, the only reason I'm still alive today is because of Coke Notes. And you're like, freaking what? And then you start, so zoom out even further and think like, well, what was it about, our website that was easy to navigate? Or our form, like the way our form looked that was trustworthy enough for that person to type their credit card in or whatever. Or like, what was it, the colors or the button size, or what led to that person taking that step? Because if anything got in their way, and they never used it, who knows what could have happened? And it just makes every little thing so important, because it's all contributing to someone feeling better. You're like, the level of responsibility that we feel is like sobering for sure. Absolutely. It's a privilege to get to be a part of that person's story.
So we've got just a couple minutes left, and I like to ask this question. What is something unusual or contrarian that you believe that nobody else believes? What's something unusual that you think about that nobody else thinks about?
I guess on the music front, I think that people who look scary, like people with a bunch of visible tattoos, like face and neck, and wearing black clothing and have a bunch of piercings, and those people are truly some of the most kind and caring and supportive and generous people in the world. And it's almost like, I told one of the pastors from my small group that I actually trust somebody more when they're like covered in tattoos and like look like a metal person, quote unquote, because I'm like, oh, this dude's been through some stuff. And so have I. And now we're best friends, even though we've never spoken. There's like I have the opposite reaction. Like, if I'm walking down a street, I'm not worried if there's someone who like looks intimidating walking towards me. I'm like, nice, it's just the way I'm kind of wired, like culturally, from spending so much time in the music scene.
That's a perfect answer to that question. It hadn't occurred to me, but you're absolutely right. And you yourself are an amazing model of that. Obviously, your commitment to what you do and to helping people cannot be questioned. 10 years of volunteering, building this mission, the enormous amount that you have sacrificed to make sure that other people don't experience some of the things you experience, or just to help people who might have, is so noble. And the idea that nobody should conflate these two worlds is an incredible idea. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Music is music. That's an expression of feelings, but you put your money where your mouth is every single day of your life. So it's pretty hard to argue with that track record, I would say.
Dude, also, last thing I'll say on that is there's this misconception that like people in the music industry are like burnouts, like touring musicians are like just lazy or whatever. Dude, if you haven't toured full time, you have no, it's the opposite of lazy. It is like, I genuinely think that if you took every touring musician and pulled them out of that environment and put them into any corporate environment, they would be in a management position in like 6 months because of how freaking hard artists have to work to achieve what they're trying to achieve. It makes any other job look like cake in comparison. So when I see someone who's like from that music or art environment, I see how hard they've had to work for pennies, for peanuts. I'm like, wow, imagine if we put them into like a real business and had them literally outwork everybody around them on accident. They're like, oh, I wasn't trying to embarrass anybody. This is just how hard I work. Like, I think corporate America needs death metal is what I'm trying to say.
There it is. That's the quote. We're going to pull that from the tagline. Done. That's the thumbnail. That's the essence of this talk. What's a last piece of parting advice that you have, or thoughts, or self-promotion, literally anything you want to close with?
The thing that I always want to leave people with is something I was thinking about earlier today, which is the phrase, everything changes all the time. I freaking love that phrase so much because every time I'm like experiencing pain or disappointment, or I feel betrayed by somebody, or an interpersonal relationship is struggling or whatever, the phrase everything changes all the time brings me so much peace, because it's like whatever I'm experiencing right now has a 100% chance of changing at some point in the future. It might not be the opposite, but at least I know it's not going to be exactly like this forever.
Powerful stuff. I love it. Again, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you. I wholeheartedly support you and your mission and what you're doing. I wish you nothing but success. At least you've got the beach part down. You may not be in Hawaii, but you got the beach part down of your existence. So I hope that all of the good things come, and that it continues to grow, and that it provides you with the life that you've been hoping for and enables everything you want.
Thank you so much.
Thank you enough, Johnny. And with that, the official podcast is over.